Well, welcome everybody. This is part of our series that's showcasing winners of WAVE's Founders Award, which gives cash prizes to villages for outstanding programs or services. The video and slides from our first Zoom program last month that featured Calvert and Woodley Park Village in Washington, D.C. With their Sunday Suppers program is on our website under WAVE Programs and then search Archive of WAVE Programs. And the video and slides from today's program will be posted there in a few days too. And we're really pleased to have the leaders of LOWLINC Village and Rapp at Home Village, both in rural areas of Virginia. And they're joined by, I guess, just one of their partners now from the Regional Transportation Collaborative. And they're going to tell us about some really creative collaboration that addressed the challenging transportation needs and people with physical mobility issues. I mean, these were really innovative partnerships that created positive impacts for older adults. So I'm going to introduce everybody first, and then you can introduce, and then as you come on, you can say a little bit about yourselves. So we have Jean Comol, right? Did I pronounce that right, Jean?
Yes.
Okay. Good French name. And she's the executive director of LOWLINC, which is Lake of the Woods, Virginia, which was created back in 2014. And Victoria Lang is the executive director of Rapp at Home in Rappahannock County, Virginia, which was created in 2015 as a real pioneer of a rural village. And also on the line, we have Kristen Lamperazza, who's the mobility manager for the Regional Transportation Collaborative of the Rapidan Regional Commission. Ray Parks, Director of Community Connections for Older Adults for Rappahannock and Rapidan, was going to be on the program because he's one of the collaborators on this, but he was ill and texted me at 4:30 this morning that he was ill and couldn't join us again. So Jean, are you going to go first or Victoria?
I guess I'll get started and then I'll hand it over to Victoria. And I just want to thank, WAVE for the opportunity. Well, first for the recognition with the award and also for the opportunity to share this information. So I very much appreciate, all the work with the partners. So you'll hear a little bit about how different villages are able to partner in different ways, especially thanks to the flexibility of our partners. I just want to give a very quick overview of LOWLINC, just so you know who we are as a village. And so, our vision, of course, is much like many of yours, which is where everyone has access to services and support they need to age well. And as we know, transportation is a huge piece of that. And so that's the focus of this presentation. You want to go ahead? Yep. So these are just as a quick overview of the types of member services that our village provides. Transportation, health and wellness programs. We have our vaccination clinic coming up this Saturday. In-home tech support, light home maintenance, social activities, speaker series, friendly visits, and we provide lists of local contractors. Also lots of special projects. As of, this was 2023, so the numbers have grown since then, but just to give you a picture of approximately where we are, is we have 150, now 160 members, volunteers, 160, now 170. Our services are pretty intensive to members, so I know that sometimes different villages have different numbers, so our service numbers kind of reflect the intensity of what our members get. So as you can see, 1,200 rides provided by volunteers last year in about 41,000 miles with almost 12,000 volunteer hours, direct and indirect. Okay. And this is one of the exciting results of this partnership is our 14-passenger minivan that we have access to. It's parked in our community. You'll hear more about how that happened soon, but we use this all the time. Go ahead. Yeah. And because, these things don't just come up, just rise all by themselves. I just wanted to show this picture to show you some of the people that it took to get this started, which they started the ball rolling in 2015 and 16. And all of the people on this slide have worked on the collaboration. Within those are LOWLINC folks. And then our other partners outside of LOWLINC have been Kristen Lampraza, who's on the Zoom, Ray, who, as you heard, unfortunately couldn't join us due to illness, Low Church, and Rapp at Home. And we have, I'll go into more details about this, but right now we have about 12 PASS certified drivers, and 2 PASS certified trainers. Let's see, we had lots of input from, or support rather, from some people in the community, like our Orange County supervisor, somebody who was on the planning commission. They were not directly involved, but they did definitely meet with us and help support our efforts.
And for those who don't know, PASS is the state standard in Virginia, and many other states follow that same certification to drive state-owned vehicles safely. It is a passenger safety and sensitivity course that helps volunteers transport individuals in the best way.
Yeah, thanks, Kristen. And I can never remember that acronym, so I appreciate you sharing it. And then this is the other vehicle that we, gained access to through this partnership, which is a caravan. And both of these vehicles are able to transport people in wheelchairs or with limited mobility. So the minibus has an electric lift, whereas this one is a more manual, roll the person in type of situation. But this vehicle can transport a driver, a passenger up front, and either a wheelchair or 3 people in the back. So that one, the minibus, we typically use. Well, I'll get into those details later. There's different ways that we use the different vehicles. Okay, LOWLINC transportation. So our vetted volunteer drivers, we have many who drive their personal vehicles to take people to medical and other appointments, shopping, social events, and on errands. And then, like I mentioned, we have about 12 people who are trained to drive the minivan and the minibus. And they are located right in our community. I mentioned the Low Church. So we didn't have an office when we started this partnership. We do now, but at the moment we didn't. So we needed a place in our community that we were able to park these wonderful vehicles. And that's where the Low Church came in as an early partner and allowed us to park them there. And so again, we use those things not only for social activities, but for medical appointments. So because of this partnership, we've been able to expand or bring in new ways that we're serving members. So again, that medical appointment with the use of the wheelchair lift, we were not able to do that before. And we have a member who had his own van, but it broke down a lot. And so he really relied on us to be able to get him to an appointment. We've expanded, trips to Walmart and the mall and other places for shopping. We've been able to go on theater outings and to sporting events. And that's so critical because we've had people who are very socially isolated who just wouldn't leave the house. And we, kind of supported them into at least going on one trip on the minibus with us. And after that, they signed up for everything. And so it's just really powerful to be able to have this type of support. We also have opened it up to the community. So we really, really promote civic engagement by older adults. And so we don't limit that to our members. Basically, if somebody needs a ride to the polls on election day from our low income senior living community, we drive them and other opportunities. Okay, and there's a picture of the people coming back from the Fred Nats game. Very happy to have been able to enjoy that baseball game. They're on the minibus. The benefits of this collaborative partnership that we've all developed together is that, of course, we're able to better meet the needs of people as far as social connections, sense of belonging, civil engagement. We've increased their access to medical care because we're able to get them to appointments that we just weren't able to cover by ourselves, longer distances, that type of thing. Again, access to food and awareness of resources. It's also increased volunteerism. Seeing that minibus running around town, lots of people notice it, and because it's nicely wrapped with partners' names and what we do, so it's raised the visibility of our village, and also just about, you know, Encompass Community Supports and the Regional Transportation Collaborative. And then people say, you know, what the heck's that all about? And we get an opportunity to tell them about villages and the village model. Another lovely picture of our members and volunteers coming back from a trip to the library with their books. And one of our drivers and trainers, Reggie. So our timeline is, LOWLINC was founded in 2015. And at that time, we began delivering, or really in early 2016, we began delivering services to members and developed an informal agreement with Encompass Community Supports, which is our CSB, but also in our case, our AAA. And at that time, we were able to begin using that minivan that you saw a picture of for medical and legal appointments. And then there was lots of work between 2016 and 2021, but that 2021 is when things kind of really revved up with our partnership. And it was really about us as a village being aware of some of the things we would love to have done, and then discovering the partners who are already out there thinking similarly, doing what they needed to do. And so when we were able to come together and find out that good work was already being done all around, and we just needed to be able to connect and grow that. That was just a really exciting time, again, in about 2021, which is when we, started getting to know Kristen, who you'll hear from, and Ray in this capacity. So in late 2021, we did advocate for transportation needs assessment in our end of the county, and that was funded by the Regional Transportation Collaborative. And out of that assessment, and I think we have the next slide, we were able to determine that there was a need for transportation, particularly to gain access for food and get to medical appointments. We discovered that there was a significant lack of awareness of existing transportation resources, and of course identified the need for partnerships and community education. So that really informed, the direction of how we operated with some of our programs and our focus. So in 2022, we got together with RTC, which is the Regional Transportation Collaborative, and Encompass Community Supports. And that's when we actually began to have use of the 14-passenger minibus with the electric wheelchair lift that I showed you before. It's great because the vehicle is owned and insured by our Encompass Community Supports, and again, supported by Low Church, allowing us to use their parking lot. And then later on, initially our volunteer drivers were trained by Rapp at Home, which is, again, one of our great partners. And then our first outing took place to see the Fred Nats, and you saw that picture. So transportation needs assessment, we already talked about that a little bit. Go ahead, next slide. And then in 2023, because we had access to these vehicles and the support from those partners, we really saw a huge increase in the number of social activities that we were able to do. So we probably take the minibus out anywhere from 4 to 6 times a month on trips that carry, most of the time, 10 to 14 people. And that is frequently social activities, sometimes it's community engagement activities, and sometimes it's medical appointments. And then in 2024, it was exciting to continue to deepen the partnership with some of our other partners, including Low Church. So now they are also members of the collaborative, and because we have 2 trainers right there in the community, we're able to provide training to not only our volunteers, but also the Low Church drivers. And our goal is to, you know, be able to work with each other. So if we're shy a volunteer, we can get in touch with them and say, hey, do you have anybody available? So, all right. So with these vehicles from 2019 to 2024, we have made 772 trips. And again, that's just with these vehicles, not the personal vehicle trips, and 2,416 passengers on those trips. And that wasn't happening, obviously, without this collaboration. So social connection, we've had 1,078 instances of members and volunteers attending 77 social events in 2023. And I already told you Mary's story, and that was the one where she just did not want to do anything until she rode that minibus. We have increased our medical transportation, and I've already told you Steve's story because he was the gentleman who wouldn't have been able to get to his very important doctor appointments without that lift. And of course, we've increased access to food trips. Go ahead. So that's the LOWLINC story. Except I would, you know, I do just want to really thank all of our partners. You're going to hear from Kristen in a little while for making this possible, because it's really helped elevate our village. It's helped to ensure that more people had access to those things that make being able to stay in your home successful, the social connection, you know, the medical and food access. And so I look forward to answering your questions at the end of our presentation.
Okay, so now we're going to turn it over to Victoria with Rapp at Home.
Hi, first thing I want to say is we have somebody here working on one of our printers. So if you hear any strange noises, I'm going to apologize up front. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Rapp at Home is what is known as a rural senior village. We serve Rappahannock County and some of the adjacent areas. We were established in 2015, where we started off with 50 members. And when I got here in 2023, we had 300, and we now have over 650. Rappahannock County, as probably with a lot of rural counties, 30% of our total population is probably 50 or over. And so the need continues to grow, as Kristen can assert too. We have some unique challenges as a rural community. There is no public or very few public transport. Well, there is no public transportation options in Rappahannock County. We have to go long distance for critical services, includes medical, pharmacy, groceries. It's a drive. Because we are a rural agricultural county, we don't have the infrastructure. So these were all keys that drove the creation of Rapp at Home, transportation being the main one at the time. Oops. Okay. I'm not quite sure what happened, but all right. Transportation is crucial, as you know, for your seniors. It's, you know, without transportation, there's isolation, degradation of health, loss of community. With age-related physical symptoms, it reduces the mobility, and vision changes can make it a real challenge to navigate, and transportation solo. So transportation is the largest program and largest service that Rapp at Home has right now. We have other services, but transportation is our largest. And I'm not sure where we are in the presentation anymore. So I guess we just go to the next slide. The volunteer-driven transportation model is the model for villages. And it increases the social connection, enhances independence, reduces isolation, and it really does empower the community. But one of the important issues as you move forward with your village is to keep in mind that volunteers do age out of their ability to provide this service. We have been incredibly lucky in that our drivers will actually come to us when they get to that point and say, I've reached the point where I no longer feel comfortable driving anybody but myself and my spouse. It's sad, but I'd rather have them age out than have us do it for them. What's a successful collaboration looks like? I've only been the executive director of Rapp at Home for going on 2 years now, so I can only speak to that 2 years. We in 2022, we outgrew our ability to keep up with both our volunteer pool and the need for transportation. So we had been in partnership with the Regional Transportation Center for a while. And what we did is we expanded that partnership and cemented it. And what that gave us is it gave us the capacity to communicate and schedule. It actually helped coordinate our resources in such a way that we had a bigger impact. And it expanded the participation in the shared vehicle system. We have a wheelchair. We were very lucky. Rapp at Home has its own wheelchair van that was donated to us, but we also have one from the Regional Transportation Collaborative. And in Rappahannock County, we are the only service provider that actually has wheelchair vans. And we are incredibly lucky to have them, and we use them. The wheelchair rides given, obviously there's been a huge growth. Rides given, there's been a huge growth. Rides requested, there's been a huge growth. And honestly, we could not have met the need without the relationship with RTC. In 2023, we provided 600 rides, drove 27 and change miles, and served 250 individuals. In 2024, we have provided 458 rides. Volunteers have driven over 10,000 miles, serving 240 individuals. As you can tell, this need grows and grows. What I would, for those of you that are just starting your villages and looking at having transportation with something you're going to need, what I would recommend is that you realize it takes time to get a system like this in place. Don't think it's going to happen overnight. And as you move forward with your transportation needs, you will discover what other services you need, because we have a laundry list of services that we do. We've done like almost every month, we do between 12 and 13 social or educational events. And so we are here to help you guys in any way. That's it. Let's turn it over to Kristen.
Thanks, Victoria. Sorry about the glitch in the slides.
It's okay. I just couldn't keep up. I can't talk that
I think we got them all though.
Yeah, and I think Kristen will speak to this, but I just wanted to interject real quick that it's, you know, the partners' flexibility that has allowed them to, you know, help support Rapp at Home and LOWLINC in different ways. We're both villages, and so we're similar in a lot of ways, but we also approach things differently. And so being able to, you know, support us in the ways that work for us has been, you know, really helpful to us. We started out with just, you know, not just, but driving people in our personal vehicles. And so we continue to get some support for that, as well as the shared vehicles that Victoria and I have talked about. But anyway, thank you for that, and take it away, Kristen.
Thanks. So I'm going to give you the nuts and bolts of what's behind the stories that Jean and Victoria shared with you. I am the mobility manager for Planning District 9 of Virginia. So Virginia has a planning district that covers every part of the state. And our role as a planning commission is to operate in the background of the community and to create solutions and supports for localities that are suffering from similar problems that cross these invisible locality lines. And so we bring people together and we create solutions, but we aren't a direct service provider. So we're always trying to utilize partnerships or contractors or contracts to provide the services and the programming that we come up with. And so Our model was developed back in 2019 in response to some shifts in federal funding that were going to be impacting us at a local level. We were told a couple of years prior that there was going to be a diversion of about $3.4 billion away from transportation funding at the federal level. And I remember being in a room with a bunch of colleagues and thinking, well, yeah, right, that's not going to trickle down to our level. It's not going to affect us. And then fast forward a couple of years, we were told, yes, that it finally had reached us, and we were going to be losing some funding streams and some accessibility to some long-term foundational funding that was available to a lot of our smaller nonprofits. And so we looked at what was happening and what we projected was going to happen in our community. And we came up with this concept of this collaborative that was a working, functioning entity that provided some support to these small nonprofits that were going to be losing their funding, and that added an avenue of how they could leverage or pass through funds that we would be eligible to apply for that they may not be eligible to apply for. And then we thought that if we brought all of these people together, we would be able to leverage the resources that we were currently using, which a lot was overlapped, who we were serving, where the money was coming from, and where we were serving them in our community. And so we were able to leverage that at a much higher level and kind of put all the pieces into place to be more efficient in how we were providing services across our region. So our basis of our model is designed to be a completely flexible partnership. So that means that as the years change, and even throughout a single fiscal year, as things fluctuate with partners, they're able to leverage and access as many resources or as few as they would like to from the collaborative. So we have a whole host of different resources that we offer our partners. And if they have a drop in staffing, for example, or a funding loss, and they're not able to continue to have a full-time staff for X, Y, and Z, we will step in and try and provide that support. If they all of a sudden find themselves with an influx of transportation requests that they're not able to meet, we will step up and try to create solutions for them. If they have a change in their audience space where they're seeing these kind of transforming aging vulnerabilities that are increasing the types of needs that are associated with transportation, then we're going to come in and we're going to try and find a professional to help them. And they'll use those resources for as long as they need, and then they'll stop or kind of lessen those as they become more stabilized, or they find other funding or other resources, or those needs change. So you can see there are key features. We have a lot of different items that we have listed there. It kind of all goes back to that planning district commission work where we're thinking of and strategizing about these problems and trying to create resources that are going to help at that background level. Our infrastructure is completely dependent on our mobility center. We are the first one call, one click center in the Virginia area, or excuse me, in the state of Virginia. And that was a best practice solution that came out of our coordinated human services mobility plan for the state. And the way that Virginia hands out transportation funding is that you're able to raise your hand and say, from this CHISM plan, the Coordinated Human Services Mobility Plan, I'd like to do X, X, and X. And so we raised our hand and we chose, we wanted to put into place a one call, one click center. We thought that would be really helpful in our area. And it started as just a single phone number with 2 staff. They answered the phone, asked what the person needed to travel, what their details were, and then took that information and tried to give them an applicable resource. We weren't coordinating any transportation for the first year and a half. And then as this system has grown, we have started to add services and transportation coordination and wraparound connections and all kinds of things for the public access through the mobility center. But because the public kind of goes to this one source, the mobility center, for supports, we're able to connect them to all of our local transportation programs, all of our nonprofits. We can coordinate a lot of those services directly. And some of our partners like LOWLINC are very independent and use their own software. And so we will transfer them to LOWLINC to get a ride. And then for Rapp at Home, they started using our mobility center to coordinate their transportation directly because of the influx in clients. And so we will coordinate and schedule their transportation for anybody who calls in. So because the public has this one entry point, we're able to collect a tremendous amount of data about our region's needs, and we can specify it down to many different types of demographics. And it allows us to continually validate funding and support for this infrastructure and the partnership as a whole. Our core partners have been from the beginning Encompass and Aging Together. So they're on the outside of this slide. Encompass is our community service board, and they happen to be the AAA in our region. So they have a goal and a mission to serve older adults with a host of different supports. And they are actually who we contract to employ people at our mobility center. So like I said, we're not a direct service provider. So we went to our partner Encompass and we said, do you want to take on this contract of staffing a mobility center? And they were willing to do that. And you can see a list at the bottom of how each of these programs are involved. Aging Together is a secondary aging program in our region. They are regional, and what they do is try to build awareness and connection with older adults across the area. They work directly with the AAA and all of our partners to try and address priority needs for the aging population and connect them with available resources. And again, they are not a direct service provider, so they are a connection point for our community. And then over time, we started connecting with several volunteer driver programs in the area and the village models. And so at the beginning of our partnership, the AAA program was using state funding to provide transportation, volunteer transportation, through a small program that they called Caravan. And when we realized that we were going to have that giant funding loss, one of those losses was the end of the senior services grant that came through the Department of Rail and Public Transportation. And so Encompass was no longer going to be able to access funding to pay for that program. And we stepped up and said, we can access that funding through another grant source, and we can continue the use of these vehicles. So they had a fleet of vehicles that they were using for that purpose at the time. And I believe that there were 6 or 7. And then we stepped in and said, we will fund those. We don't want you to get rid of those, but we want to be able to share them as a resource across all of our programs. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So that's just a quick slide. That was for Ray, and he's not on the call today, but the AAA is House and Community Service Board, and they do have a history of serving older adults in our region. So it made sense. It was just like click light bulb that they become one of our core partners. We have a pretty interwoven structure right now. This is just a very teeny tiny glimpse at how we are interwoven. The actual structure is much more tangled up than this one, but you can see from these connections that the AAA is connected to several different entities. The commission is centered there in the middle with its RTC structure. And then we've got these village programs, volunteer programs connecting with all of our core partners as well. And what we're doing through that interwoven structure are these things listed here. We're looking at long-term planning, priority needs of the region. We're kind of developing funding for projects that we have planned out, and we're helping to implement services and obviously still having that information exchange across our area. So we did kind of have like this catalyst year, so to speak, when we implemented the RTC, where we were going to different organizations and we were talking with them. We began with that AAA, and we established that mobility center. And then we realized that there was a lot of overlapping similarities between where people were getting funding and the audience that we were serving. And we recommended that we reorganize that a little bit with the AAA so that they could focus on what they needed to do and allow the village programs to focus on serving that audience in those specific areas. And we also approached LOWLINC and tried to develop a partnership with them. At first, LOWLINC was very independent. They wanted to maintain their autonomy. They were concerned about that. And we assured them that we weren't going to infringe on that in any way. And we talked through different ways of how we could offer supports. When we first started talking with LOWLINC, we were just providing some supplemental funding. And then over time, we've started to have more and more interactions and engagements through that collaborative and kind of produced all of those results that Jean referenced earlier. Same thing with Rapp at Home. We started with a smaller kind of support through our collaboration with supplemental funding. And then over time, Rapp at Home found itself with their influx of clients needing some more supports. And we stepped in and said, we'd love to do that. And we have started taking over their call coordination. So in this process of the catalyst, we approached the AAA and we wanted to formalize this sharing of vehicles. So we developed the shared vehicle volunteer program, where basically we set up an MOU between the AAA and the villages and the volunteer programs. And it basically says what each organization is going to do. And Encompass owns and insures the vehicles. The RTC maintains its use through the mobility center and then collects all of the data. And we leverage all of the funding for Encompass to pay for those expenses. And for all of the partners, the villages and the volunteer programs, for their fuel to use all of the vehicles. And then the village models and the volunteer programs, they agree to follow these processes that the state outlines and the mobility center data collection, so that we can continue to validate all of the funding that comes along with that program. So then all of a sudden, before we had a fleet of 6 or 7 vehicles that were barely being driven because they were all owned by a single entity who had very few volunteers. And we connected them fast forward with 6 partners, including the 2 village models. And now they're being driven constantly, like all the time they are in use. And so the state is really, really happy with that outcome because it's a funded asset that is really being utilized in a creative way that produces a huge impact. So this is kind of just a little glance at our timeline, some of the things that we talked through. In 2021, we were able to leverage additional vehicles through some state connections. We brought on those minibuses, and then again, we brought on a few other wheelchair accessible vans. And that was a really great opportunity because during the pandemic, we had some programs across the Commonwealth that were unable to continue functioning and wanted to relinquish their assets back to the state. And the state has already made that investment, and so they don't really know quite what to do with those things. So we raised our hand and said, we can make use of those assets, give them to us. So we purchased them for a very, very nominal amount. We used community funding from a foundation to do that. And then we had them wrapped with our partner logos to be able to use as social trips. And LOWLINC was really the pioneer behind using these transportation resources for social trips. That was something completely new to our region that we hadn't been collecting or even prioritizing the cost associated with that. But the state's only concern as far as funding transportation for older adults is that they are able to access that support. They don't care if it's for medical, if it's for social, if it's for to go to the grocery store. They're happy that the vehicle is being utilized. So it was great for us to be able to partner with LOWLINC and kind of kick off this focus on social accessibility, which is wonderful for the people that we serve. The vehicle that Rapp at Home has, that they own, came through our partnerships. We had a client who was very giving, and they said that they were going to be getting rid of their wheelchair vehicle and they wanted to donate it to one of our programs, our volunteer driver programs. I checked in with that program and they said that they did not have the infrastructure to be able to do that, and they didn't want to kind of bridge into that ownership of vehicles yet. And so we reached out to some of our partners Rapp at Home, one of them, and they raised their hand and were like, we can take that vehicle, we can utilize that, and we can put that infrastructure into place. And so it's been great to be able to keep that asset in our community. So I was just looking to make sure I covered everything here. So basically, in 2023, we started coordinating Rapp at Home's transportation requests directly because of the influx of clients. And that's worked out really well because it allows Rapp at Home to focus on that service provision and what they're passionate about, interacting with those clients and supporting their needs. And we will focus on the back end of things and doing that infrastructure piece of that coordination and data collection through the call center. In 2025, for this fiscal year, which just begins today, we have brought $1.3 million in for our region's funding for transportation, and some of that is passed through to our partners, including the village models that are on the call today. So this is just the slide about the shared vehicle program that I mentioned that goes through the AAA. We utilize that through the Department of Rail and Public Transportation's 5310 grant program. That program is available in many states, and of course, every state has its own regulations, but we've found that in Virginia, the Department of Rail and Public Transportation has kind of gone through a transition in the last 5 years where they've been very open to looking at policies and regulations associated with the 5310 program and opening up to respond to some of our push on some of these boundaries and these traditional usage, and saying, why can't we use it in this way, or why can't we do this? And so they've been really responsive and great with allowing us to explore that grant's boundaries and use that funding in a really creative ways in our community. One of the programs that we introduced through the RTC, we secured local funding from a foundation to provide a mileage reimbursement to volunteers. Many of our volunteers do not want a direct mileage reimbursement. They do not want money for what they're doing. They're very passionate about the services they're providing. But we thought it would be nice because we have a barrier that we often encounter when we're looking for volunteer drivers, where they say, oh, I already volunteer with my church, I already volunteer with my Lions Club, and so they don't have time or the desire to participate in another organization. And we implemented Donate It Forward to say to drivers that if they drive with LOWLINC or Rapp at Home, then they're able to donate forward their mileage reimbursement to a nonprofit of their choice in the area. So instead of getting a check for $500 for their mileage over the course of the last year, they can pick any nonprofit that they're passionate about, and we will send a check on their behalf with a letter explaining how that money came to be. And it's really great because it serves so many purposes, but it really helps with our outreach and value surrounding volunteer transportation. This is just a kind of a brief listing of some of our partner resources. There's a whole lot of things here. And typically when a partner comes to me or a village model comes to me and asks for something or presents a need, we will create what we don't have. So this is not an exhaustive list. We are always building and making new services based on our partners' needs. And again, thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to explain that to you. If you'd like more information about this model, we're happy to provide it. We have shared this model across the country with several state level programs in Alaska and California, Texas, Oklahoma, Ohio, New Hampshire. So we've run the gamut of sharing this concept. It's recently been recreated on a smaller scale in our neighboring region in the Thomas Jefferson area, and we're excited about that. So if you're interested in learning more about that or using our technology, we're happy to share that. Just reach out. Then we also have some takeaways, and I'll let Jean take this slide. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, my cursor wasn't behaving. It's been, I was just thinking about this as you were talking, Kristen. So really what it takes to make this happen is, just developing your own infrastructure and being ready for opportunity, and then really reaching out to partners to have conversations. And because it is sometimes surprising what they're doing, and when you start that conversation, you can discover opportunities that you might not know exist. And I think it's also important to think about all the relationships, as we know, are two-way relationships. So, sometimes it's easy to kind of sort of think, oh gosh, we're already so busy, we don't necessarily have time to do this, or we want to make sure that our organization's okay with funding. But we found that the more we opened up and embraced partnerships and collaboration, it really paid off in so many unexpected ways. Of course, it helps to have dedicated volunteers and staff, be ready to innovate. And of course, you always need data, which is sometimes easy to gather and sometimes not so much, and funding. So for us, that it has really worked out well that we're sort of at a place where we were ready for a partnership because we were doing lots of transportation in private vehicles by volunteers. And we were just ready to take that next step. So when the Transportation Collaborative was available and we became aware of what they had to offer, we were really able to join that partnership with them. So I'm yes, I think it is important to note that there's so many different ways to collaborate and partner. And so you heard that Rapp at Home has been able to grow their organization in a way that is meaningful to them, by making choices in how they wanted to collaborate with the partners. And LOWLINC is kind of although we're in a rural community, we're kind of a very tight-knit community within Lake of the Woods, which is a gated community. And so we work differently with the folks that we serve. And so being able to maintain our organizational structure and goals and what's important to us while still having the support of partners has been fabulous. It does take time. Like you saw from the timeline, as early as 2016, our founders started making those connections with our Community Services Board and AAA, and over time things just grew. So it doesn't happen overnight, but you have to start somewhere, right? Take that first step. So collaboration enables expansion beyond your village's capacity, ultimately increasing impact. So
yes, that is the last one. I forgot to mention Rapp at Home and LOWLINC, they collaborate with us in very different ways. They both do things in the way that they feel benefits their organization. So they retain their autonomy. We are an overarching entity, but we have no authority. So what we do is encourage participation, flexibility, and trying to meet their needs and continue to maintain that role for us, kind of just coming to the table all the time to talk to them and figure out what their needs are and put those processes into place. But like Victoria mentioned, these ideas do take time. It is a non-traditional way of doing things. This isn't the regular. And it did take time for these ideas to sink in and for the trust to be developed between our organizations, for them to understand that we weren't going to take away their choices and we weren't going to kind of assert any dominance over how they're doing things. We're just going to recommend solutions and try to keep coming up with them until there's something that works.
Excellent. Well, I do want to thank you. I think that this has been an amazing presentation. I think that you are really setting quite a model for this kind of collaboration. I'm not going to say much more right now because I want quickly for people to raise their hands. You must have questions here. And we will look for a raised hand if you can down on the bottom of your screen. where it says react. You should find a way to raise your hand. Do we have any questions here? Well, I have one right away while you are all gathering up your courage or your questions. And it does, one of them does get to the question of data. You mentioned at one point early on, your one call, one click center collects demographic, health, and transportation data. Would you sort of briefly just say a little bit more about that? Because as Jean said at the end, data is important for the AAAs to be able to justify how they're using their money, and for the villages to see how valuable it is for them. So can you briefly say just a little bit about that data? And how
we use a nationwide product called QuickBase, and it is no coding. It's click and see, click and change. It's a very nominal expense, and what we pay for allows us to share it with all of our partners and programs. It has an incredible sharing capacity without changing our fees. There's a set fee every year, so the fees never fluctuate, which is awesome for planning. And what we're able to do with that software, it is a data software, and it has automations and things that can happen automatically. And we use that every time someone calls in for transportation supports, and we gather the information about them and about what they're looking for. And we connect them with whatever available resources we have, including transportation supports through the villages. And we collect a whole bunch of information about the client, about their situation, about the reason that they need to travel, and about their solution. We track the information about the solution given how many miles were given, how many hours it took, how the service went, a whole bunch of different things. And we collect all of that data and we kind of put it together at any given time. It's cloud-based and it's real time, so we can pull data at any given time to collect information that's pertinent to grants, pertinent to stakeholders and funders, or to trending needs like the dialysis increase that we've seen in the area. And so we're able to look at that information in a really hyper-focused way, and also in a comprehensive, much larger scale. So that information helps to validate our current funding, and also kind of make us very competitive to bring in diversified grant funding, which has been really successful for us over time.
Thank you very much.
I'll just add a quick note on that. So we collect our data through Club Express, and then because we do, are a little bit more autonomous in how we operate, so we are able to provide that information to Kristen, who puts it in, but also we have access to our little portion of her QuickBase system, so we can actually enter some data directly too. But so anyway, I just wanted to mention that because I know a lot of us use different software.
And I know we have another question, but I just quickly wanted somebody, either Kristen or you, are you collecting personally identifiable information?
No.
Yes, we do. We do collect personally identified. So we have their name, their address, their phone number, but a lot of that information is kept hidden from whoever it doesn't need to see it. The database has a really great modification ability where we're able to change anyone's access to see parts of information or parts of services and not the whole equation. We don't collect PHI information, so we don't collect information about diagnoses.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I will be coming back to you about that, but I think, Nicole, you had your hand up. You're on mute.
Yes. Hi. Thanks, everyone. Would you mind putting the name of that software in the chat just so we get the name of it?
Sure. It's
and
called QuickBase.
QuickBase.
Mm-hmm.
And then a similar question. We are a village in DC and growing our transportation program. And so we're looking for ways to manage data and the requests that come in. And I know villages are using lots of different ways to do that. Some are doing it in Club Express. We have Club Express. Some are doing it manually with Excel. Some are using some kind of app to match drivers and people in need of transportation. Have you found any good technological resources that can streamline the process and make it easier for lean villages?
We share the QuickBase software app with any partner that wants it. So Rapid Home does use it. Then we have another partner that's not a village model, but they're a volunteer program, and they use it, for example, just for financial management. And then so we have another program that focuses just on veterans, and they use it for their entire program for all of their services. And they collect all of the information. They have forms that are automatic. The reports can be automatic. There can be notifications that are automatic. We collect information about why the person wants to travel, including, so for example, what Mary Jo was referencing to, they may say that they're in kidney failure because they have renal disease. We won't put that in there, but we'll put they're going to dialysis. And so they may call in and say that they have to get to the store to get food because they don't have any food in the house. And so then we'll have an automatic feature when our individuals answer the phone and collect that data, where it goes to a wraparound service case manager, and they're able to call that person after we give them a ride and follow up with them about food supports. So it's all automatic happening through our system. I don't have to get off and email this person and at DSS and say, hey, could you follow up? It just automatically goes to them. So we found that this software is really adaptable to our needs at any given time. It's very, very user friendly. And so we used it for a tremendous different range of different kinds of data collection and usage. But I'd love to share it. If you're interested, just shoot me an email.
That's very helpful. Thank you for sharing.
Any other questions?
I
Let
do
me-
have one comment if we have a moment.
Yes, absolutely.
We use the data also when we go after grants, which I'm sure a lot of you will be going after as you move forward as well, because we're a non-fee based village, so we live off of donation and grants. So having that data is incredibly important for us to show what we're doing for the community as we move forward.
Excellent, very excellent point. Well, for those of you who are interested in this topic, there will be a session at our upcoming conference on it, and something that I'm personally very interested in, and that V2V is very interested in. And there are a lot of efforts underway to analyze what is the situation, how can we make it better? Because we know that especially the smaller lean villages, as you would say, just don't have that capacity. Other comments or thoughts here? Well, I want to thank everybody. I think this has been really a tremendously rich discussion. I want to invite you to join us at our upcoming conference on October 15th, just 2 weeks from today. It's going to be in Silver Spring in person, and we have some exciting plenary speakers, including the leader of the National Academy of Medicine, who happens to be also the first pioneer identifier of the social determinants of health over 50 years ago. And he will be speaking about the role of villages in the health ecosystem, which is especially timely since both the federal government and state governments are making their master plans right now. And they're all talking about person and community-based systems. Also, there are 9 breakout sessions that focus on critical operational issues, including, as I say, the one on data. So again, that's September 15th. Go to wavevillages.org to register. And also on October 30th at 12 noon is the last of our series. It's going to be on memory cafes to connect diverse communities from the Golden Age Village in Baltimore, which is reaching a very interesting population. I don't know, Rubina, are you still on the Zoom? I think she's left. Anyway, so we hope to see you at both of those events. And you can always reach me at president@wavevillages.org. And thank you so much.